Hello, everyone. Hi. We've got a treat for you. I'm Jenny Cooney with the International Australian Screen Forum, and I would love to invite down Baz Luhrmann and Jill Bilcock. Both I don't think need introductions by everybody in here. And I'm going to say very little because I know what these two are going to be like, and they don't need me at all. But I do want to just start out because in the documentary there's a lovely story about, you know, the fact that both of you, it was your first film, and that, Jill, you were running around during the ballroom scenes, you grabbed a camera and you started shooting things that you knew you would need in the edit that Baz might not have known at that point. So I'm wondering, maybe talk about how you came together for Strictly and what that relationship was like for both of you.
Oh, we came together because of a cup of tea.
Yes. That's how I make all my choices,
yes,
even today.
Absolutely, on the quality of tea making.
I cast most of the major pictures. Go make a cup of tea, come back, and you got the gig.
I want to check the cup it comes in. That's
you know, I remember, look, I just remember Jill walking. Storytelling and collaborating on storytelling, for me, is always sort of a conversation. And Jill was one of the rare people who walked in my room. I was like, I don't know how old I was when I made the film.
28?
Yeah, 26.
26?
24.
Yes.
Okay. 19.
I think he was 8.
Yeah. Oh, Miss Bilcock. I remember Jill walked in, and this is always a telltale sign to me. She walked in, she's very groovy looking, you know, crazy energy, like... But it wasn't an interview, it was a conversation that just went on, like hours past.
Yeah,
hours.
Yeah, that's right.
And to me, that's the telltale sign, because... And you had more to say and more to talk about. And it wasn't just the film, life. I went and joined the Communist Party, ran away to China, Betty, my mum, all in the first 10 minutes, you know. Yeah. So it was easy.
Yeah. Well, that started off, but no, it was fabulous. We just really got on, and Baz said to me, well, you're an older person with a younger outlook, and I'm a younger person with an older outlook. And he did know a lot about lots of music and lots of great films. He had definitely been, you know, scanning the whole art world, music, film, opera, the works. So he's just an exciting man to be asked to do a movie with, even though he was so young.
So that was the first time the two of you were in the editing room together. You weren't in a room, were you? You were in a house, maybe? I wasn't sure. Talk a little bit about that very first collaboration.
Look, will you tell it as you remember it, then I'll recut it.
Yeah, okay. Well, I had a editing room which was in a house, but they lived in my house as well. So they were separate. One was, you know, in South Melbourne and the other was in Brunswick. And so we lived the film completely. And it was fabulous. You know, it was... everyone was there, and so the hours were ridiculous and the fun was over the top at times and quite excessive. But...
Should I ask?
Yeah, we did quite a bit of dressing up.
I had good legs then. My legs looked good in that frock.
You know, fairies.
Yeah. We were fairies. And remember the
we only had
roast that never got
potatoes
me?
to eat.
This is getting so off track so quickly.
Sorry.
Oh, my God. This is not going to...
You said you were going to run it.
Yeah. I don't need to. Hey, one thing I want to say, add something to yours. I don't need to recut that. That's true. Right? You've just skirted things perfectly. One thing that's I now realise is incredible, it's inherent in Jill. I don't think I realise how extraordinary it was until I now look back. we knew nothing about making movies. The level of hands-onness, like there was a third member of our team, CM was there, this guy, young guy called Bill Marin, who was this incredible Toulouse-Lautrec-like character. And at some point, George, you remember, like we were all living with Jill number one. I will tell you something else, the issue of money. It never occurred to us, but we ran out of money. And so the reason Jill just kept going. Like, we're not talking 6 days. We're talking like 3 months. It just didn't occur to us. We just kept doing it, pursuing this kind of vision, this thing, and making it better. Now listen, things like I think our naivety was so empowering because things like we wanted to do the opening credit sequence. We had a vision for it. There were no visual effects. We didn't have money for it. So Jill taught Bill how to do animation. And he animated the opening graphics. I think we got one ping. Like visual effects was, the thing goes, do-do-do-do-do. It goes ping. And Jill, by the way, when Jill was at it, because we did it on film. And Jill would have me like, I was her assistant, hold a film. She taught me how to Steam Deck. Oh, it's amazing to watch, by the way. To see Jill on a Steam Deck is to see like a great potter actually like, give me that clay, making something with her hands. But she would take a Chinograph, so where visual effects and just draw like a comet or something. Like effects were drawn.
I actually did that for Spielberg on how to make an American quilt.
Well, that was budget. He had no money.
I scratched it through the sky.
Yeah.
Just to let him know how it would look.
The
comet, yeah.
But I think the Strictly Ballroom ping, you'd like draw it
Yes,
on.
that's right.
Yeah.
But the worst thing about that title was then you had to send it up to Sydney to get processed, the whole thing with the ping on it. Yeah. It was actually, shot down in Melbourne and sent to Sydney. And then I went up there because we were behind schedule, as we always are. And the guy came out and he just said, there's nothing on it. We didn't thread the camera the right way. And it had to be redone. I don't even know if you knew that, but I cried. I cried when he said that to me.
That's the one bit of the film I don't really like. It needs to be fixed, that bit. What you're reminding me of is we lived it. Jill said
totally lived it.
She said we lived it. And we really worked crazy hard, but we also had crazy joy. And you've got to remember one thing, my friends. We killed ourselves in that movie. To get the movie made was near on impossible. When we made the film, it was done distinctly in a style with a particular language, which was borrowing from old movies, hiding theatre, We screen it. We had one distributor, right? And he had one cinema for us. It was called Greater Union. And we screened it. And Jill and I have this tradition, which we now share. We put the screen lights, get it, we hold each other's hand like this.
Yes,
we squeeze each other's hand like that.
In fear.
Right, in fear, right? So we're like doing this. So this is the first time we did it. I go like, right. I mean, my first movie, my first screening, like, about 3/4 of the way through it, the one guy, I won't say his name, it's kind of well-known law, he walks out like that. And then I go out and I throw up. And Jill's going like, are you all right? Bad stuff from the fairy night, And I said, no, tension. And you all right? I said, and we heard back, and he said, not only is it the worst film I've ever seen, but Pat Bishop, you've ruined her career. Now, happily, she goes on to win posthumously, very sadly. She dies not knowing she wins the AFI for Best Actress that year in that film. But then begins the whole thing of like, I basically go up the coast with Bill, and we're cutting our hair, and then the phone rings. It's like, we're over, the film's over. Like, and Jill's like, we did it, it's going to be great. And this guy, this woman comes on. I will not digress. This woman comes out. She goes like, yes, there's someone on the phone. This is Pierre Rission from the Cannes Film Festival. I'm going to offer you one night in Cannes. Boom, the rest is history, Okay. But it just shows that I think the way Jill allowed us to come in collectively and live it, gave us a wall against fear. Yeah, and that's what Jill brings, I think, to everyone she works with.
Yeah, but I think together we all just wanted that film so desperately to work, and it was just so good. It was extraordinarily, well done. There were very primitive ways of doing effects. Like I'd have a piece of film on the screen on the Steenbeck, and I'd trace it off and run down to the studio where they've got to match a shot from outside to inside, climb up a ladder and put the tracing paper over the camera and show them exactly where the position of the camera was, climb down, run back to the editing room. So, but we did a lot of, interesting effects, and we loved the idea of doing in-camera effects too.
It just was handmade. I mean, the film
very
was
handmade.
It was
Very
literally, physically handmade.
So,
Well, early lunch, I think, right?
do we have a clip at all that you want to
well,
show?
you know what? Actually, one thing. I was going to be Michael Parkinson on this and get all the great juice out of Jill, but I'd like to do that because I think it's.
You can do that.
I know, but I blab on, but I think that it's unusual, and I think what's great about the film. It's hard for me to see you running around with all these other relationships that you've had behind my back. I thought I was the only one.
You just made more movies, Baz.
Did Sam Mendes stay in your house in Melbourne or not?
No. No.
Well, Sam's a very nice English chap. He wouldn't.
I know that.
He's respectful.
No.
No, but in all seriousness, I think what I'd like to know, I know how we made things, and what germinated in that time was the beginning of not just that relationship and that film and a cinematic language. It goes on to sort of, to be honest, bigger canvases, greater adventures, Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge and all of that. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But before we do, we'll come back to that because there's maybe a couple of little pieces I've got and Jill and I brought you that we can show. Never before seen stuff. Which shows the process, I think.
Yeah,
but
it's not
before
the
we do
Christmas
that,
party,
now that
no.
we've got over the bumpy bit, that you've been running around all over the place with other directors, how... Because here's the thing, like, there's a certain language, right? But in your other films, the language is absolutely, completely different. And I think of Sam's picture, we're all great supporters of each other. Directors tend to be.
Yeah.
But you have to plonk yourself into someone else's creative life. How is that? I mean, how do you...
That was pretty hard because we still hadn't finished the mix on Moulin Rouge. So I was still looking at that. We're doing the sound notes up in Chicago. But, Sam said to me, kind of, slow down, just slow down. This is not Moulin Rouge.
It's too choppy, that film, actually.
And he had, coming from the theatre, totally different ways. It was his second film. American Beauty was his first. So it's his second film, but he kind of saw things like people said the whole line in the shot, so you couldn't cut away to somebody else. It just didn't seem to be in his language, so I had to adjust to that. So if Paul Newman was saying something, you couldn't cut to Daniel Craig listening. You had to wait till he finished. So that was an interesting kind of request. I don't think he meant to do it, but that's how he saw it when you started to show it to him. So that language is quite different.
What's another, like PJ's film, when did Muriel's happen? Because Jill was reminding me that I'd seen a bit of Muriel's when you were cutting it, which I thought was, Jill was like, I was like, this is
I was kind of like,
said,
what am I
And for those of you who were there
there,
last night for the Muriel's screening, Jill had her own event, so we didn't get to bring her out, but, we should give her a round of applause now for the amazing job she did with Muriel's wedding.
But on that film, it was so kind of ferociously funny, like it's much blacker humour, and it successfully carried it off without killing your characters by being too cruel. You still loved the bad guy, the Bill Hunter guy. You still have to love all your characters when you're doing black comedy, preferably without making true enemies. So that was a big learning curve. But, Baz saw what I was cutting, and it's so Australian and ferocious, about the type of place where he grew up. So Baz responded to it straight away, and I'm feeling like not too sure about what I'm doing. And then it became, it went on to be like part of, as we were saying, these catchphrases like, "You're terrible, Muriel." It's Deirdre Chambers. What a coincidence. And, I say them when I see one of my friends. Yes, certain friend. But anyway, it's like you know, and it's gone around the world, and it's like.
Yeah, I told you I was on a plane. Seriously, I think 3 days ago, an American person in front of me said, like, "You're terrible," in an Australian accent. "You're terrible, Muriel." Not to me, just so universal language of Muriel.
So no, working with PJ is quite different, but what Baz taught me when we were doing the comedy, because it's, you know, it's quite heightened, Strictly Ballroom, and it's very, very tight, isn't it? And he knew exactly when I'd got it right. And it was just a scene, like a chatty scene, and tighter. And it was fantastic because you realise that, you know, some comedy can be really slow and work. You know, if you've got Sam Neill in it, it's often much slower. But it works. No, but you know what I mean? No.
Sam's not here, right? It's just between us, okay?
No, he does a brilliant sort of
dry humour.
Yeah, dry humour.
Dry burns.
Yeah.
Very slow dry burns.
Slow burn on that. And it's fabulous. Where Baz's humour, like myself, he's quite speedy and a bit impatient, and it works. So he led me to actually finesse that technique, which I then handed to PJ. So it was like passing the baton for somebody else who kind of knew what they wanted, but they didn't realise that I was cutting so tight, I suppose. And,
you know, Jill, I think you're on an amazing road, because I think you should talk a little bit about how that intense pushing of the boundary of rhythm and speed of cutting and cross-cutting and things we did on purpose, which we knew we were making grave sins, like crossing the line and speed-ups and all that stuff that went into Romeo and Juliet and fighting Moulin Rouge, that when it came out, we were so lambasted for. You cannot imagine it, like we committed some, you know, mortal crime against humanity.
Would you like to share some of those comments that you told me
about? Talk about it, because Jill used to push me and I used to push her, basically faster. And the thing is, we had a philosophy and we were pursuing it. We were just saying outside, though, if you see films now and hold up against it, it's actually not that radical. But then it was so radical. You should talk about it.
Yeah, no, the speed was particularly in Romeo and Juliet, because you're dealing with verse that has a rhythm. So what do? Oh, I just speed Miriam up running across the, you know, the room or something.
Well, when that happened, we were talking about it, like, oh, like, you know, there's a wide shot low. And at that time, you know, your television, this was a new thing. You could, like, go zzz, like that, you know. I wish we could just go zzz, like, Jill would like, oh, you mean let's just do this? Zzz. Oh, yeah, let's do that. Okay, early lunch, you know.
But there are things that we learnt, or I've learnt, about rhythm that suit certain storytelling. And it's incredibly important. And another director, Rob Sitch, who did a film called The Dish, he too has the same thing that Baz has. It's got to be tighter. And also, he taught me, you must love these characters. Yeah. You must. Even if they're being kind of like dozy, sleepy Australians, embrace them. Or if they're just, you know, some crazy person trying to, you know, just even someone, you know, serving someone in a scene, just a minor character, make sure that you kind of don't make fun of them the wrong way, basically. You actually, the rhythm does that. If you give people time to think about it, they'll think, oh, that person was a bitch. Or, you know what I mean? Like, you actually have to keep, it's all part of the whole. For me, the movie starts and it ends. It's one shot. It's always been that, even if it's a slow movie, it's one shot. So everything has to be properly connected. Don't think, oh, gee, I got that scene done and I'll move on to the next. It has to have a relationship rhythmically to the scene before. And so comedy is the hardest. I think it's definitely the hardest. And I just think it's fantastic, though, that I actually learn from people pushing me too about something I wouldn't have known about. And I think Baz's experience on this, you know, in theatre helps, because it's a one-go situation. And he brought that to Strictly Ballroom. The day we shot the end of the film, He only had one chance at everything.
Which was the first day of filming I ever did, by the way.
Yeah, and
5
it was
cameras.
huge. 41
Hour of
setups.
lunch.
41 setups.
Yeah, I'm faster now. Yeah, one setup a day maybe. You know, listen, I'd love to get into that because that's a crazy story because it was the first day I ever filmed
Yeah,
and blah blah blah. And in fact, how that story works, huh? Yeah. Oh yeah. And guess what? We had 1 hour at lunch at a real event in Melbourne to shoot, and we all turn up, and it's like the hour goes by, we haven't got half the shots. And so everyone starts leaving, and we're like, hey, they're all leaving. Like, what are we going to do? So we're running around getting clothes. Jill's got like clothes like this, throwing them on chairs, right, to pretend people are in the bleachers, right? So don't look at the film if you'll see it. Otherwise, we'll not tell you. Right. Hey, I think you're going somewhere which might segue into the little clips we've brought because what you're talking about, Jill, is okay. There's the rhythmic style of the card, and of course, it's like music. There are moments when you sit, you earn the right to sit, etc. But it's coming from because all of them have a heightened language. We're forcing the audience very early on to what we would call the marriage moment. The marriage moment is the moment where you confront the audience and go, this is not psychological realism. You're not going to lean back and pretend you're looking through a keyhole at life and you're just an observer. No, 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 no. Wake up, wake up, wake up. We're going to be involved in this. A slap, 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 slap. Oh my God, what is this? Right now, there's a moment. And in the moment in Strictly Ballroom, it's probably when Ken Rattings walks in. I'm
Absolutely.
Ken Rattings, and Pam Short's broken both her legs. Boom, and she goes, boom. At that moment, you either sign on, lean forward in your chair, or you're out of there. You'll find that moment in all the films.
Yeah.
There's a lot more to say about that, but the reason I bring it up is because this isn't something randomly we start doing in post. I would be working with Jill. Like, I work with great collaborators like Craig Pearce, my high school friend. We ride together. CM, who was the production designer, I married her along the way sometime. Right. She's got all these Oscars. It's crazy. And then, but I mean, all these collaborations, long-term. Jill, right, on the Red Curtain trilogy. So even with Strictly Ballroom, we were setting up in the beginning, but Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, I mean, Jill, you might want to talk about it because I think that we can show, we've got here, this sort of footage has been out a bit, but the bit I'm going to show you has never been seen in its entirety. And what you'll see in the Romeo and Juliet, if you want to see it, is a year and a half before we make the movie, Leonardo, for no money, comes down to Australia, flies bucket class, brings all his friends, right? And he does a workshop. We film it, which I'll show you today, and you can see we've cut it. Jill's cutting it. So the cutting style and the language and how it's done, we're doing that before we've even got the film greenlit. Again, in Moulin Rouge. But Jill, maybe you want to talk about it, and then we could segue to those. What do you think, Jenny? Should I bring that stuff in?
Yeah. I definitely. It was. I was cutting How to Make an American Quilt. So, on the weekends, I did. I think it was in one weekend, cut all that material that you brought over.
Yeah.
And it was fantastic because, first of all, Baz had an idea of some of the music in his head, and they had an idea that they were going to push stylistically the way it looked, which is kind of very different to the way it looked, but it's in essence identical. Yeah. So you should have a look at it, and it is the famous beach scene, you know.
Yeah. So, all right. As a director, I would need to see the eyes of the person operating. Who is that? Where is our operator? Are you hiding up there? Okay, well, look, why don't we do this? If I go up, that means turn the volume up, because I haven't teched this. So here's that. Leonardo turns up, and actually everybody in this, they're all his friends, all the other actors. Oh, we're like, okay, you're going to be Mercutio, right? I mean, actually, Mercutio, no. They're all his actors. We ever get Don McAlpine to shoot it? I mean, Don shoots it on a video camera.
Yeah,
I
he
think.
did.
Right.
He did.
Okay, standing by. And lights coming down. And let's bring the lamps down. Action.
Mercutio, thou consortest with Romeo! Consort? Thou make us Mercutio. Thou make us of us. Du gehst for Discord. This my Fiddlestick. This is to make you dance. Du, consort. Consort, run to some private place, hero eyes gaze on us. Men's eyes will make to look and let them gaze. I will not budge for no man's pleasure eye. Please be easy. Here comes my man.
The low vibrator can afford no better term than this. I were the villain.
Tybalt, the reason that I have to love thee doth much excuse the appertaining rage in such a greeting. Villain am I none. Therefore farewell. I see thou knowest me not.
Fine! There's another excuse for the injuries that thou hast done me! Turn and draw! Draw! Turn and draw! Draw! Turn and draw! Draw!
I never mentioned so good Capulet, whose name I tender as dearly as mine own. Be satisfied.
Claim on both your houses! I'm sure it's up to you, houses.
Oh, I am fortune's fool! Is thou, or I, or both must go with him! Either thou or I, or both must go with him! Either thou or I, or both must go with him! Fucking stupid! Stupid!
Was that how you guys did you submit that to the studio? Is that part of your process of how you can explain your vision for the film?
Actually, we were not greenlit. I already had shown them a kind of reel where they got we got that bit of money to make that, and I went to D. I only met him and his dad, and I said. He told me years later, he said, like, you kidding? You gave me 2 free tickets to Australia. Of course we went. But I said, look, why don't you come down? Don't agree to make the film. And blah, 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 workshop, do that. So we did that, yes. And that workshop, when we cut that, they went like, they went like, you know, I didn't really get it, but gangs are cool. And I really love the bit where Shakespeare, that line that Shakespeare wrote, shoot me, fucking shoot me. It's fucking great, yeah. So let's give him like $5 million. Yeah. That is exactly what happened. You know what's crazy? It's a tiny, tiny thing. I won't bother you with this, but I've just, like, again, I mean, Leonardo's such a great actor. Like, do you see that? Apart from the fact that I did his blood makeup and it was... But did you see when he ran away? I forgot. He took his jacket off. Now, that is what a great actor is. Like, I didn't say to do it. I didn't even know what it means, except obviously he's trying to peel off his skin. He's just fantastic. He is great.
The great thing about this is that we refer back to it when we were cutting the real scene. We felt like we weren't actually getting quite what we got out of this emotionally.
Yeah, well, that was like, here's something interesting. You see that shirt? That's all shot in Surrey Hills 1.5 years earlier, right? That picture with so that was found. I think Kim found it in a Hawaiian shirt in a op shop, right? Then it goes
store
to
for the
Mexico.
Americans.
Yeah, the much copied shirt, which is actually in a frame in my house down here, but like that just goes to show how early we're developing the vibe, the visual language. Yeah.
And also we did a lot of prep for Moulin Rouge.
Yeah.
A heap for that as well, because it used to happen, like Romeo and Juliet, CM and Baz came to see me in Princeton, New Jersey, and we discussed all of what you might do next. Remember, you came.
Yeah, it was Moulin Rouge. I'm pretty sure. Like
And Moulin Rouge, I came to Paris.
Yeah, we were on the way to Paris.
Well, I went
all
to
I
Paris.
remember was being so confused because Albert Einstein was there in the film at Princeton.
Oh, Walter Matthau.
It was a film about Albert Einstein. It was Walter Matthau, right? Yeah.
And Meg Ryan.
Meg Ryan, yeah. And he said, dumb story. I said, we're working. I said, we're going to do musical. I'm going to reinvent the musical. And Walter comes up dressed as Albert Einstein. He goes, oh yes, that sounds really good. Our musical, we're very good. I said, Walter, oh my God, you're such a legendary actor. You should be in a musical. He said, yes, I've done a musical. It's called Hello Dolly with Barbara Streisand. Perhaps you've heard of it. I went, oh, yeah, that one. That's good too. Yeah. Anyway, stories from the war.
That was
But listen, on
fabulous.
Moulin, should I show some Moulin? Because what happens is, as we get more and more elaborate, and after Romeo and Juliet, pretty much I think I could have said, I'm going to make Bottle of Water, the one camera, epic, done deal. Like it was just kind of like, I'm going to reinvent the musical. So our resources were better and the process was better, and we were lucky enough to go in a way. What we set up in Melbourne. This idea of a dojo and a community and a campus. We had a creative campus in Fox Studios, and we had it started in my house, Iona, where and anyway, if we play this clip, you'll see again, not only the visual style, not only the dance style, the music style, but the cutting style we're basically making the movie before we make the movie,
Yeah, and this is made up out of just makeup tests, costume tests, and bits of rehearsals.
I think you should, just one thing, it's just come to me this. It's so unusual, I've forgotten all this, but when we were making like Moulin or Romeo and Juliet, there's always comes a moment where we're cutting and you're always under these crazy, very heavy deadlines. And every now and then we'd have all this footage and Jill and I would say it's like you would take like 10 days. I mean, this is a giant expenditure of time to cut a sort of elongated trailer of the movie. More than a trailer, but less than a movie.
13, 14 minutes they both
we
were.
call it the reels.
Yeah.
And
it tells the story totally out of context, but exactly what the story is.
It is. And it helped us a lot stay on point, and with the language and with the cutting language. So should we have a look at the Moulin bit? Because, I don't know.
This is just a bit for the can-can.
Yeah, it's really the can-can, yeah. Okay, standing by for the can-can. Positions, please. All right, and action. One thing you might not realise, but all that, you see stuff that looks like it's in a film, but they're actually just screen tests. We're doing costume tests. So when Ewan's doing all that, and Nicole, that's just her costume testing, you know. So,
But it's
so
also-
that's tells you
yeah.
when we're doing it.
But
Right?
it was also done to get everybody excited.
Yeah.
And we showed them before they started. And the idea why we do that other thing halfway through is also to make sure that the morale of the crew understands that we are making a good movie.
Well, it also tells them where they're
Really
going. Like,
good
I
movie.
remember that first reel. We'd have, I mean, it was Moulin Rouge, so we had to have a few parties. And, my God, they're so far out. Why isn't it as fun as it used to be? We had so much fun. We worked hard.
Absolutely.
Right, but we put on a reel. Remember that crazy party we had in Oxford Street? And the crew's going like, oh, what is this crazy thing we're on? There's no way this... They weren't. They're all believers. They're believers, but so many naysayers. I mean, like, before we even finished the movie, SNL had an episode... The movie wasn't even out. We're sending... Well, there was... it was fantastic, actually. They were singing, like, numbers. Everybody was kung fu fighting, you know, doing that and sending it out. So everyone's going like, this will never work. And at some point we played a reel. Remember, it was really hard too, like so hard to make. And we played that reel, and people just, the cast and crew just like...
Go crazy. I love it. Love it. Love it. Yeah.
So can I ask the two of you what happened when you disagree? Well, and if you disagreed, do you remember any particular scenes or moments?
I'm going to say this so amazing about Jill's. I mean, among the many amazing things. You debate and blah. Look, really, the other thing we do, it's so important. I have rules of my company: communication, transportation, accommodation, and hair, right? And I mean, hair on the camera, but also off, like well-being, basically. You've got to make sure that there's a sense of well-being. But when Jill and I get into an edit suite, a room, we build a room, like where the window is where the tea's going to be made. It's a thing, you live together, like you're literally bound together. Now, one thing, if we get into a disagreement, we'll debate a bit, sort of stuff, blah. But after a while, Jill will ultimately, in the end, she will just give it a go. And it'll reveal, usually it reveals not one point of view or the other point of view, it reveals what I would say is the third idea. But Jill always go like, but always give it a go. And always. And always something better comes from it.
But we always, I'd say something and Baz would go, oh, yeah. And then he'd say something and I'd go, oh, that's even better.
Yeah, I think that's more the
It
most
always,
of
it did
built,
that thing.
for sure.
Because
For sure.
Baz's life is like a huge crescendo, you know. And every scene is like that almost. You put that effort into it all, though. You know what I mean? You do put a lot of effort into making every scene it's the fullest it can ever be.
Yeah, I think, look, the films are no doubt a reflection of life and in those times, each piece of it. But the language demanded that too.
Absolutely.
It's a maximalist language with nonetheless a spiritual centre, I hope, to it, and most importantly that it is about something. I mean, for all the fun and games of Moulin Rouge, in the end it's the Orpheum myth, and it's about growing on through scars, growing up, really.
And an emotional outcome is always the ultimate result.
The ultimate, yeah.
But we just love firing off each other, I think, even if, something didn't quite work, try it again.
And the other thing is, like, well, I don't really remember saying to Jill, you seem old but young, because she never seemed old to me, but... And I wouldn't have said I'm young but with an old spirit, because... I don't know. I just maybe I said it. Maybe I was trying to like convince her to do it. But being in a room with Jill, she is young in a sense in that anything that's happening or on or like music, like she's always playing music. The room is great to be in, and that really counts. It's everything. I mean, you go in a room. I've been in a room where I was making something else, and the room wasn't right, and everything wasn't right. Nothing was right. And you could never gel. It's called play acting, a screenplay, You're meant to play, like, you got to work, but people don't come to see work. They come to see a play, And so when you're making things, you have to create an environment of play and then do a hell of a lot of work, And
for Jill, I think a lot of people, and I didn't know this until I started getting to know what editors did, they assume a lot of people, the editors come in at the end after somebody shot a movie and then they come in, whereas it's really a collaboration with the filmmaker from the very, very beginning. Are you often on the set all the time, or was it sometimes with Baz, sometimes with other directors? How different were those relationships for you with each filmmaker you've worked with?
Totally different. I'm not, I was on the set a lot in the beginning because I felt that we were all very close because the studio was downstairs and I was upstairs, and that was the perfect situation. Muriel's wedding was the same. So I could always go down and have a look. But as you got into bigger productions and but they became more formal and less fun, you preferred to be separated, like on a bigger studio picture or something. You wouldn't know about this, Baz, but it's true.
What?
You don't want, because all the stuff I did with you, I was always with you.
Yeah.
Like in Mexico, just 100 yards away.
Yeah.
But when you're working on another film, you kind of prefer, that the editing room is as far away as possible.
I do. I don't. Me.
Other
filmmakers.
Not other filmmakers. Other directors.
She's telling you
What
what
other
other people
directors?
do.
What are you talking about? This has gone crazy.
But you're working while they're filming, and they come in and out.
I'm talking about
I know
other big studio films.
whatever.
Yes, I do.
Like,
Because he does.
I know what Jill's talking about, and I'll tell you something very interesting for me. You're out on the floor, and like you've lived with it, the writer, acting. I mean, I cannot even begin to tell you what a day on Moulin Rouge might look like. But believe you me, there can be the drawing of blood, and I saw that, right? To do with hair, by the way. But you go through it all, and you run over the shots and all that. One of the great things is at the end of the night, particularly with Jill, absolutely with Jill, is that you would retreat to editorial. It was like a safe haven, and to look at rushes and sit there. And I kind of miss this now because now it's so you can actually have your rushes on your phone. Like they Bluetooth them in and rushes we call them. But the thing of the ritual. I mean, God, in Mexico, to have finished in Mexico, we built our own world there. It was an insane experience. Filmmaking will never come up to that experience in Mexico. Forget the crazy mansion. Another time. The thing is. That you'd go back to editorial, and Jill builds this kind of, it might be crap. I mean, it might have been the worst day you had. The first day on Romeo and Juliet was like, I went, I can't do this. But you come into this world, it's warm, it's supportive, Jill's already looked at the material, and she's not going to lie to you or tell you that, it's so good. But she's always seeing the possibility in it. And so you're immediately with someone who's going, maybe you're not a loser. Maybe it's got hope. And by the end of the night, you're buoyed up. Plus, you talk about stuff you need. So it's an incredibly important part of the day, Without that, you'd be kind of going home
I miss
crying
that.
at your pillow.
I miss it a lot, and that's why I'm saying it's become so stretched out now and there's so many other people involved, and you've got to get it off to the studio, and everybody else has got to look at it, and blah blah blah.
Not my films don't go off to the studio.
So give us an example with one of the other directors, one of the films you've worked on. What's it like from the beginning to the end? Where do you fit in with other filmmakers?
Well, sometimes you're not in the same country. I'm not going to actually pick any directors at the moment. The people can work that out themselves.
That is a long way away.
Yeah.
You mean editorials in another country?
Absolutely.
When did this start happening?
We'll talk later.
We got to talk, love. I mean, this is not good.
Yeah, I'm serious. No.
Another country.
A lot of countries in Europe are very close.
I'm glad I retired. I really am. I'm so good to have retired.
But like on Romeo and Juliet, for the
so good.
the garage, the gasoline scene.
Yes.
I had to kind of whip up something and run out there with it and show you bits of
on the set. So this is like 170. We're actually in the middle of Mexico City. It is a real gas station. I've been in
limitations.
I've been in hospital. Like I've lost 100,000 pounds. Like on being held up in crutches or something. And like I got an IV in my arm. I'm not kidding you. And because I only got the gas station for 5 minutes. By the way, quick segue. I remember seeing the video, Jill, remember this. In the video, that's when we had the idea about, you see how that's cut? It's cut like an Italian spaghetti western. And that's where we started it in the editorial. So as you see when we go to film it, we're going, how can we make this like an Italian spaghetti western? See, that's just saying, right?
That's absolutely right.
Yeah, you come out there terrible. I don't know how you survived.
I loved it. That whole opening of Romeo and Juliet was probably one of my proudest achievements, I think.
It should be, because
I loved
honestly, it was so complex, and everything in that, some people think it's stock footage, everything that was shot. And in fact, we shot some of it in Veracruz, and we made our own riots and everything. It was bonkers. Like, we had our own army. It was mad. But, and I'm in it, actually. Yeah. Oh, my finger is.
Yes, your finger is.
It's my finger, yeah.
In a helicopter.
Yeah, it's my finger. Watch it again. You'll see it. It's a good finger.
It's a
can
very
rival Hitchcock if you
recognisable
keep that
finger.
up.
It's got a bend in it,
like
see?
that. You'll see.
You'll find it.
No one cares.
Someone will probably donate some money for you to get it fixed.
This is going really.
Did you-
off.
did
Let's
you
get-
wanna-
let's get people to ask questions. That's better.
Sorry.
Did you
Yeah,
want to
was
say?
a question.
Did you want to? Yeah. Are we up for the 15 minutes? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
We've got plenty of time for everyone else to ask questions.
It'll be like we're on one of the.
Baz, you
chat
can
shows.
choose because you're
Yes.
directing.
No, let's have some. Okay. This lovely woman over here with her hand up. What's your name? Jess.
We have
We've got a
microphones, so-
microphone coming to you. I can translate if you can't be heard. Jess, what would you like to ask Jill Bilcock?
Well, it's actually a multi-question for both of you.
Multi-question.
So obviously as filmmakers, you're both extremely passionate with everything you do. Is it important to have crew and people around you that kind of elevate that passion and make sure it stays driven to like get the film done to such a fabulous degree? Like, does that make sense? Do I need to translate myself?
Jess, it
or-
makes incredible sense. No, and I think
try.
Jill go first, and I have a little something to say too. Up to you,
Right.
Jill.
I'm very particular about who I choose to be in my edit room. They
It's like the Shark Tank,
first
just
of
a
all,
lever like
they have to have a
this.
sense of humour.
Yeah.
They have to be good with music and know what's going on in the world, preferably musically. And you
No
know,
life.
and no
Outside.
life.
None. Extending to the crew, actually, it's a very interesting thing. What Jill's saying is totally right. The care you would take to cast the actors, because if you've got the script right and the actors are right, pretty much we can fail in every other area and it can still work. The care you take to cast the actors, you have to take to cast your crew. Because the chemical mix of people coming together, as David Lean said, it's 300 people holding a pencil, drawing a line, right, sketching. That pretty much makes or breaks you. Now, having said that, as we've just demonstrated, we make those reels because when they believe in us and that we're leading them somewhere, we know where we're going. And sometimes we don't. We just know it's kind of out there somewhere. And so buoying them up, engaging them. I mean, the thing about films, you know about this, Jenny, is that ones like that, they become very emotional at the end because it's like having fought a war and being together. You share something that you know you'll never quite experience again. So it's very important. It's a short answer.
And also, for example, Baz would say, you know, I think Ewan and Nicole could do with a little bit of cheering up. Could you cut something?
Yeah.
So I do a little cut of little fun stuff, and they go, oh, yeah, I'm doing okay.
Yeah.
So that sort of thing.
With only their close-ups in.
Yeah.
You know? No cutaways. It works a treat. I'm just kidding.
Some good advice for other filmmakers.
Oh, okay. Question number 2. Welcome to Oprah. Okay. I'm going to come down here. I should get on because there's many questions. This lovely costume you have there. Great. Beautiful belt. Lady with a beautiful belt.
Thank you. Music seems to be such an important part for both of you in your filmmaking and sometimes dance as well. And I'm wondering do you do the sound design on your own films? Because normally that's a separate head of department.
Yes, and I've never given a short answer in my life.
Okay.
Absolutely. I mean, can I say, look, certainly Jill comes into the process very early, but I gotta tell you something else. I mean, I make a lot of music. It's a kind of day job. I have a label at RCA, so I've produced quite a few tracks. So I love music that much, but I didn't so much back then. And I tell you though, what's true, I reckon, even when I'm writing, I would have been seeing with Craig, and then the music team would be, and then Anton Monstead, who, by the way, was my assistant, then became my music supervisor. He is now the head of Capitol in Los Angeles, so he's done all right. But and we produced a lot of albums together. We've actually been nominated for Grammy, just saying, right? It's not an Oscar.
Back to Jill.
It's not an Oscar. Anyway, thing is, the music's actually written into the script. A lot of the musical ideas begin in the script, and then early on with Jill, we'll be pulling tracks. And what's great with Jill is she'll actually take the music and she'll start stuffing it herself. She'll say, well, but this, I found this, like it's a collaborative thing. But she'll start to push the music in sometimes I'll just have a list, right?
Big list of a lot
and I'll
of
just say, Jill,
things.
go in and, use it like clay.
Do you write titles of songs, or do you just kind of, there's something in the mood of this?
Okay, well, so in Romeo and Juliet, that's a good question. In Romeo, I wrote the script, the treatment to Venus as a Boy and Massive Attack. I then went to make the movie. I went like, who's this Nelly Hooper guy? Long story. Ends up doing the music on Romeo and Juliet. Okay, he produced those albums. Never done a film in his life. But Craig and I would write something like a boys' choir sing Doves Cry as if they were King's College. Or we might say something like, as if it was a blah, blah, blah style track. Sometimes a style track, and sometimes dead on what we're going to use. Yeah. We better jump around, okay? Okay. Okay, this lovely pink dress, I will bounce up there for sure and get down here, and we'll try and be quick with our answers. Okay, we'll speak very, very quickly about the movies.
Yes, okay, thank you. My name is Laura, thank you.
Hi, Lauren.
2-in-1 questions, I guess. One, where do you come up with your inspiration? A lot of your films, well, Romeo and Juliet and Moulin Rouge are obviously historically influenced. So your ideas come to you, or is it something like, what is your inspiration process? And when you write, do you already know your cast, or what's your casting process?
They're both good questions. I'll try and be very succinct. The arriving at a show for me is such a giant thing, and I don't do them that often. And it's a torturous process. I work on all sorts of, right now I've got about 10 movies I've been working on, some for years. And then I just work out what one I think should happen now, right, at this time, what might be useful putting out there, and what might feed me. So that's kind of where I come from on that bit. What was the second bit?
Casting.
Well, with Leonardo, very early on, I saw a picture. I thought he was actually like, they said, it's that kid. And we're like, Romeo, it was in a magazine. I thought, Romeo should look like that guy. I wonder if we can find an actor that looks like that guy in a magazine. Right? So very early on with, in Gatsby, very early on with Leonardo. Nicole, God, Jill, you remember? Actually, she auditioned. No. I can't tell this story. She tells it much better than I do. I auditioned everyone for Moulin Rouge. I know how every actor in Hollywood can sing, because pretty much they all came in. And Nicole was in a play, so she couldn't. And then I sent her roses. She was in a...
With Sam Mendes.
With Sam Mendes.
Yes, the Blue Room.
So oh yeah, great Sam, enjoyed the play. So I sent some roses to her, actually. I said, she sings, she dances, she dies. And Nicole went, oh my God, so great. And then Nicole says, and then he made me audition 3 times. I did it, well, I kind of did.
Perfect.
It was a vocal thing. Okay, there. Yeah?
Hi, I'm Gaia. Thank you.
Hey, Gaia.
I have a question about ethnic diversity of your movies, because now it's very popular. It wasn't back in the day when you started with some films. Yeah. Is it something you were thinking about, or did it just happen, or was it ever a question?
There's a crazy thing here which we don't understand, but if you look at Strictly Ballroom, Romeo and Juliet, Moulin Rouge, you can pretty much cast all the movies out of the same cast. There's always a grandmother figure and blah, 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 blah. So it's interesting patterns. But can I say to that in Strictly Ballroom, in the play, the fact that the original play of Strictly Ballroom, the original one, Fran was actually called Jenny, and she wasn't of Spanish background, right? And then when we did the play at 6 years old, we really thought it was important to amplify the dance, and also to amplify the fact that our country was ethnically diverse, and that the other, the outsider, that also could be an obstacle. And so it came into the play and therefore in the show. In other areas, I mean, well, Romeo and Juliet was about trying to find an exotic place where religion and guns could be mixed up with each other. And so actually through a very academic process of saying, well, what would Italy be now? We end up in South America. It's not really South America. We shot the whole film in Mexico, but we found that language. I don't know, I come from Australia. I love the crossover, the mashup, the third strength thing, yeah. One editorial question here, because I want you to see put Jill on the spot.
Yes, question for Jill.
Is that an editorial question?
Yes,
Great.
it is.
Okay.
Hi,
Go.
my name's
What's
Renee.
your name?
Renee.
Renee, this is
Yes.
an editorial question for Jill. Okay, you kill it now.
Yes, it is for Jill.
All right,
And
on the spot. I
Yes,
said on the
Jill.
spot.
I'm curious, actually, when it came to approaching Moulin Rouge, because it is a musical, what challenges or particular considerations you had to take in terms of edit, but also maybe it happened in pre-pro, like having to plan how to shoot for the edit when it came to the actual musical numbers and dance, but particularly the performances in that, and how that was, challenging or different to the previous films.
Well, I'd had plenty of practice with Strictly, so I didn't really worry about that. I felt really happy that I was going to be dealing with music and cutting to it because it gave me more freedom, and creatively I could pretty well do, create whatever rhythms I'd like, because they were, even though they're set by the music, visually you can really play with colours and, like slowing down the skirts and that sort of impressionistic feel of the can-can. It was a visual treat to know that music was actually the sound belief, that was running it, so that it actually pushed me much further. But there was no fear or about approaching that. It's still a story I'm telling. Music just happens to be, fairly dominant.
So editing the musical numbers per se,
I found
no
easier
different to.
I think Jill's being a bit modest or forgetting. Part of the reason I went to Jill was that she was already famously a cutter of music cinema, like Dogs in Space, and she cut a little band, all those clips of a band called, I think it was called In Excess. Yeah, You Can Live for
That little
1,000
band.
years, she cut all those. So her and all that stuff, I mean, she was already a music editor.
Yeah, I even did Manfred Mann and Procol Harum.
Oh.
You know that Jill was in a Bollywood musical? Oh, it's in the thing, yeah. Pretty cool.
I wanted to ask one last quick question before we have time for somebody else. There's a lot of young filmmakers here in the audience and writers and from different areas. What's the one thing, as a very experienced editor, you would want them to know about the process and where you fit in and what they can get in terms of advice?
All right, if you're not an editor and you're a director, I'd say don't let the editor ever say you can't do that. Yeah. You can do it. Yeah. You can turn something around. You may change the content, but you can do it. Believe me, I could make anything. I don't mind.
Absolutely. Jill has never said you can't do it. Or you can't make it work. She also never said that. I've never seen it. She always goes,
hate it when somebody says, no, we don't have the footage. I don't, that you really do have the footage. And even if you don't, think about saying to them, well, without that scene, we could write that content into something else as we're still shooting, if it's really a problem, if there is a real disaster, like with a performance that you feel uncomfortable with or isn't working, you can still actually maintain that piece of information and work it. Say, could we put that on another character, that piece of information? And also just look at the footage very carefully and try to move, change the beginning. Take lines out. I love taking lines out. Don't tell anybody else, but it's like everything's overwritten. Every scene is pretty
Shane
well
Brennan
made
actually
twice.
said that in the very last panel as a writer. He told everybody in this room an hour ago, everything is overwritten. That was exactly what he
absolutely. An actor knows where they're going to land, who they're going to, what their journey is, and they give it away often, much earlier, so that you start to pick up things and you realise that scene, I've got that beat, it's coming back and it's over and over again. And you really shouldn't do that. You really should sort of, clean it out if it's starting to be repetitious.
And if they want to be an editor?
Good luck. I don't know. I think it's really hard for people doing to become an editor. It's there's a lot of people now. Everybody edits. They can do it at home. They can do it and they should. You know, if you want to become an editor, cut something and show somebody.
Do we have time for... Yeah. Baz, you want to...
I just have to say, actually, right in front of me. I was too embarrassing to say no. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Kathleen. You have both taken massive risks, and especially starting out together with your first film, both of you making massive risks. And I want to know what kept you going. And you spewed in a bucket when you were watching it. And I want to know, as a early filmmaker and actress, what kept you going and what keeps you taking risks?
Well, actually, there
Maybe
wasn't
you
a
could
bucket.
mention those reviews, the test screenings that you told us about.
Yeah.
Maybe how did that not keep you going?
I mean, listen, forget that even when we made the films and they opened and they found an audience, like the level of, you have to get really used to what I would term, I guess, taking a hiding. Like just the amount of like negative comment and blah, blah, all that. So let's put that over there. We did a test screening. We're talking about, Jenny reminded me. Well, for example, on Moulin Rouge, when we did the openings, the opening number about, you know, sexual proclivity or whatever, we had a lot more extended sequences of that. You know, it was like we did Slave to the Rhythm with guys. I'm not going to go into the details. It's a bit in your face. But we went to a place called Simi Valley to test the film, right? So it might have been...
The home of the Ronald Reagan Library.
Yeah, Simi Valley is like the most suburban place
conservative.
up coast from LA. So we go in there, right? This is Moulin Rouge, right? It wasn't, you know, like... It was a big throw of money on a musical reinvention. Might have been 300 people. Within 10 minutes, almost every single person got up and left. Like, it was like a riot going that way. So you react to that and you go, I mean, actually it hurts. It really hurts. And then you're really dispirited and you feel emotions like, I mean, not to put too big a thing on it, but you just kind of do feel that pit in your stomach. And then that's why you have each other. You sort of gather round and you go, and you try and get perspective. And I think in the end you go, because I think in the end you just want it to be as best. It's like a child. You can't abandon it. You've got to give it birth. And then, you know, when it's birthed, like there's a whole lot of people want to club it to death like some baby seal, right? So that's why I get out there and hit the hustings to try and like jump the naysayers. I mean, Moulin Rouge, like all those movies opened okay, but they went round the world. We went around the world and then audiences embraced them and crazy, like the greatest joy. I mean, it's not the only thing. It's one of the great joys. I met the critic for, it's not to talk about critics, you just got to live with that, and some of it's good, some it's bad, but Owen Gleiberman was the critic for Entertainment Weekly. Yeah, Owen's for Entertainment Weekly. Do you know about this? So, yeah.
You actually told me on the podcast.
Yeah, okay. Let's not go over it then. No. But anyway, Owen, he slated Moulin Rouge so profoundly 10 years ago. And then in his book, he said, I never rewrote one review. I happened with a friend to see Moulin Rouge, and I realised I completely wasn't seeing it at the time, and he wrote a glowing review. So there you go. So it came good. But look, what keeps you going is the baby. That's what keeps you going, not you, the baby, you know?
Jill?
When it's, you know, in the testing process, for me, you know, it's kind of devastating, but it's not, because I actually, while I'm there, feel everybody in the room, and I kind of know that somebody thinks that was really weak, or that didn't work, or that they laugh at things you don't expect them to laugh at and shouldn't laugh at. And then suddenly what you do is I just kind of get really worked up to get back in to the room and change that. I just love learning the mistakes that I've made by that.
We don't. You know, it's terrifying. It's sick making, but I really appreciate testing it.
Yeah,
you know?
I do too.
And Jill reminded me when we didn't know what testing was, and when we did Romeo and Juliet, this isn't going out live or anything, is it? Because I'll tell you, we got, the thing called the cards, right? So the cards, so when they do it, they have this, there's a way of doing it. Someone leads the discussion. Now, did you feel the film was too long? Or could it be too long? Sometimes the studio might be pushing it one way. Anyway, they fill out these cards and there are numbers and things like that, but they write comments and we didn't know it. So we said, we're going to read every card. We were up at Skywalker Ranch, actually. That's where we were cutting at that stage. And okay, we've got the cards just around. Okay, well, how do we pick out the first card? It said, what did this film make you feel? This film made me want to piss and fuck. It was the first thing we read. And I went like, gee, is that a good response or a bad one? I don't know. I think that might be good. You just don't know. I mean, the stuff that's on those cards. But it helps you. It helps you. Like, it does. Do you know what? I'm with Jill. I'm never sitting around going, how dare they not get... I'm like, oh, it does suck. What are we doing? What were we thinking? Let's make it better.
Yeah.
So that, I think, always moving towards the best thing you can do. Exactly.
There's a reason for everything, it's just not somebody else's fault. I learned that when I went from film to digital. I made the mistake, the machine didn't. So just get on with it.
Well, I know we'd all love to keep going, but I think, Chris, are you coming up here? Later, okay. All right, we'll do that later then. Chris wanted to say something, but okay, we'll do that later.
I want to say one final thing. Jill Bilcock, seriously, what she didn't say was, she was talking about fixing things. And the one thing there's so many things about Jill, but one thing that's extraordinary is her stamina. When she went to fix, you'll see it in the movie, the rhythm, to stay cutting at a cutting desk, to solve a problem. I'm talking 48 hours without sleep. That is not normal. And she is a national treasure, and we are very, very lucky to have her. So many filmmakers have learned from the experience of being with Jill. So I personally want to acknowledge that because I don't know if I'd be here if I hadn't met Jill Bilcock.
Oh, well, that's a good note to end on.